9, if passed by both bodies in the legislature, would constitute the legislature's application to Congress for a convention of states to amend the U.S. Constitution. As outlined in the resolution, the convention's scope would be limited to proposing amendments that would impose fiscal constraint, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit terms of office for members of Congress and other federal officers. There is one amendment that has been introduced for the joint resolution. That amendment specifies that, as used in the resolution, the phrase "limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government" means to restrict and constrain the federal government's power and jurisdiction, and it does not authorize an Article 5 convention to propose amendments that expand federal power or jurisdiction, or that legitimize any current use of federal power that is unauthorized by the original Constitution.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for Amendment 1 to AGR 9? Representative Rantham, a second. Representative Allen. Do we have any debate or discussion? Do we have any discussion on the amendment? Hearing no discussion on the amendment, would the clerk call the roll for the adoption of Amendment 1 to AGR 9?
Representative Wickers.
Aye.
Representative Thiesfeld. Aye. Representative Allen. Aye. Representative Rantham. Aye. Representative Magnifici. Aye. Representative Murphy. No. Representative Hebel. No. Representative Pope. Representative Cabrera. All right, it passes.
The amendment passes. We will now have a motion. Look for a first and a second on AGR 9 as amended. We have a first, Representative Allen. Second, Representative Rantham. Any discussion? Representative Murphy.
So I first want to say that I applaud my colleagues for their deep concern about the problems that are facing our nation. Our budget deficit is appalling. It's getting up towards $30 billion, and I personally believe it is one of the things that could disrupt how this nation operates going forward. But this is a bad idea with good intentions. So a convention of states, who is it? James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, Ben Franklin, these guys are gone. So who are the great minds that are going to put together the amendments that would come from this convention? I don't know who they are, and that scares me a whole lot about this. So what is this convention of states for? Well, it's to amend the Constitution. But how is our track record on this ban? So the first 5 amendments after the Bill of Rights were all done before 1870. The last one of those being the amendment that gives African Americans the right to vote. So that's 150 years ago. In the last 150 years, we passed 12 amendments. Have we done a good job? How good of a job have we done on amending the Constitution? The First Amendment after the 1870 amendment to give blacks the right to vote was the 16th Amendment, which established the federal income tax. Is that something that conservatives like? How about the 17th Amendment? That took away the right of state legislators to appoint senators. Do we like that? The 18th Amendment was prohibition. The 20th repealed it. I think a lot of the women in the room, as well as I think the men, would agree that the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, was a good thing. But I have to tell you, if you start going through these amendments, it's hit and miss, and I think you're going to find more bad ones than good ones. Now, one of the fail-safes that has been given by Convention of States advocates is that, well, 38 states have to ratify these amendments. Well, I have to tell you, 38 states ratified all these other amendments also. So the idea that 38 states is the stopgap that's going to prevent us from doing something foolish, I'm not seeing that. So one of the things that we're saying that we want to do here is that we want to have a balanced budget amendment. What does that look like? What kind of things would go into that? If there's a pandemic, like with COVID-19, is the balanced budget amendment then going to go away? Or what language are you going to put into it that's going to account for that? I don't know. And I have to tell you, I feel real uncomfortable about voting for something that I don't know what it is. I would have to vote for something that somebody else out there is putting together and cross my fingers that it's good. Now, some of the experts who testified on this for the Convention of States made the comment, and I found this very interesting, amendments are followed for about the first 100 years. I don't know if any of you recall them saying that. Actually, two different people said that. And I'm like, really? So you ladies in here, are you going to have to worry about your voting rights being taken away anytime soon? Because that's 102 years ago. Is the federal income tax going to go away soon? Because that's been over 100 years. So I don't know where these people are coming from with that. The one thing that I do know is the Founding Fathers put together the first 10 amendments, and there's a number of those that we're not following. Specifically the 9th and 10th, but I'm not going to go into that in detail. But what I would say in conclusion is, so what should we do? Because I've had some of my colleagues that know that I'm on the other side of this say to me, well, Dave, what would you do about this? What's your answer to the problem? And it is a very troubling problem. I would say, first of all, what we need to do is follow the Constitution that we have and as it's written. And I would also say that if you want to do one thing that would fix almost every complaint that everybody has about what's happening in our country, is go back to the 16th Amendment and repeal it. Because the 16th Amendment gives the federal government the right to impose an income tax on individuals. I don't believe the Founding Fathers ever intended the federal government to tax individual citizens. If they couldn't tax individual citizens, the federal government would have to come to the states and ask us for money, rather than us going back to them all the time with our hands out asking them for money. This would change things dramatically and in a very important and enduring way. And that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Representative Allen.
I love it when we have a robust debate on the issues, particularly even when people of the same political philosophy have different positions, because it means we're really contemplating the implications of policy. So I want to thank my colleague who just spoke on those eloquent words. You know, the framers of the Constitution, we all revere. But the notion to think that we don't have capable people to write good language today is I think, a mistake. I think we have very capable people today who can match wits with many of our framers. I certainly don't want to deify our framers. But, you know, what's interesting is the framers were smart enough to recognize that the Constitution would need amending along the way. And they put provisions specifically in the Constitution to amend it. One of those provisions is a high bar that Congress would have to approve an amendment, both houses, by a 2/3 vote before it could be sent to the people for ratification, the people through the state legislatures. And we've done that, as my colleague pointed out, we've done that a number of times. But we have a hard time doing that for balancing a budget. I would argue that the members of Congress, although well-meaning, have a hard time making a tough decision about what to do with our finances. And it's far easier to give money away and to tax people than it is to say no. The last time that we came close to a balanced budget amendment was back in the 1990s, and it passed the House by the 2/3 vote required, but it fell one vote short in the for passage in the U.S. Senate. But if you recall, our framers also provided another mechanism by which we could amend the Constitution, and that was this provision called the Article 5 Convention of States. So if we want to revere our founding fathers and say, wow, they were really smart and they did a good job, but you know, the rest of us are incompetent and can't handle it. Well, I guess they had more faith in us than we have in ourselves. They gave us that power through the state legislatures, representing the people of this country. And, you know, we haven't been able to get it done. And we all acknowledge the great need for balancing our budget because our deficit and our debt is out of control. I think that the smart people of the United States, when coming together in a convention assembled for the purpose of crafting a balanced budget amendment, can think of all contingencies and plan accordingly. So I support this Convention of States amendment, and I do hope it passes.
I'd like to make a comment. There is, speaking to the eloquent words and wisdom of Representative Murphy and those who testified for a no vote, I think we share predominantly, if not completely, those sentiments. So a yes vote today is not a vote against those allies that I would say are on the same team with the same concerns that we all share. The yes vote is post 21 trillion in debt. And if we were at 23, 24 trillion in debt and en route to mitigate some of that from the federal level, I don't think we'd be here today. But because we're heading into 30 and the curve is straightening in a vertical direction, not a horizontal direction, we have to do something. This yes vote is for a grassroots movement that is doing something and still has protections. So even if I sided completely with Representative Murphy, during the $21 trillion dollar deficit as we headed into the 21 trillion, and I agreed with Representative Murphy, there is now the sky is falling scenario where the sky is falling faster and faster, and we have to do something. This is an opportunity to do something. And I believe it is prudent under the circumstances. So again, I think we have to be very careful that those who testified against this don't look at this as a vote against their wisdom, but a vote for a poorly trending deficit, national deficit, and that we have to do something. And I will go home and tell my kids, I voted yes to do something, and today's the day. Do we have any other comments? With that, we will, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll to vote for, do we have a motion? Yep, we have that. So we'll vote for passage of AGR 9 as amended. Would the clerk read the roll?
Representative Wickers.
Aye.
Representative Thiesfeld. Representative Allen. Representative Rampton. Representative Magnifici. Representative Murphy. Representative Hebel. Representative Pope. Representative Cabrera.
AGR 9 as amended passes. We will now move into Assembly Bill 23. Would Legislative Council please give a brief summary?
Sure. Assembly Bill 23 prohibits the Department of Health Services and local health officers from requiring individuals to receive a COVID-19 vaccine. The bill prohibits that vaccine